Hi, everybody. Craig Shacklett from URComped here. I've got a very special guest on today's Casino Innovators show. I've got Mike Chapman, who I met at the Global Table Games and Game Protection Conference, which was a ton of fun in Vegas last month.
Yep.
So, Mike, first of all, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for the URComp team and people out there. I appreciate it.
Well, I was excited to have this conversation because you've got a very, I think, innovative idea, hence the Casino Innovator Show, on how we could breathe new life into table games. But before we get into that, why don't you tell folks a little bit about your background and how you've worked all over the country?
Sure. I started back in 1993 at Turning Stone in New York. Learned how to deal and worked my way up, well, I should say down to Las Vegas. Worked at the Hard Rock in Las Vegas, the original Hard Rock, and at Bellagio before I moved on to Casino Arizona and got table games going there for them. And then right smack dab in the center of the country, Oklahoma, that'll come back to haunt us in a little bit. And then moved my way to Pittsburgh, and now I'm back in New York.
Wonderful. And again, obviously you take a big interest in the industry, and you're involved in various conferences and active on LinkedIn. So I love that. And I know you caught an interview that I did with the host whisperer, Nick Ippolito, where he lamented the fact that table games is not getting the attention it deserves in player development. And you reached out and said, hey, you know what? This may be controversial, but we welcome you on the show. Tell us about your theory or your ideas on how we could breathe new life into table games.
Well, I think, the first part of it is we're getting into an area where technology is really hitting the industry hard. And when I say that, it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. And what's happening, I see a lot of what we call in the industry retail plays. So your $5, $10 table games players are getting forgotten. They're getting pushed to electronic table games. They're getting pushed to online gambling. And again, I love the industry, not just the brick and mortars. But my fear is that if we don't really build some brick and mortar activity at the base level, we're going to lose it altogether. It's kind of going to turn into kind of a back room. Think of the big Baccarat games now. Everything's in the back room. You don't see anything out on the floor. So that's my fear. And having gone through, and I brought up Oklahoma, it's a Class 2 environment. And what the difference between Class 2 and Class 3 is in Class 3, the players are actually playing against the casino. So when a player loses money, it goes to the casino. When they win money, the casino pays it. In Class 2, it's a little bit different, and that the casino is the proprietor of the player pool. And when a player loses money, it goes into the player pool. And when they win money, it comes out of the player pool. But a Class 2 establishment doesn't get to keep that. Instead, what they do is they put a 50-cent ante, or some places do $1, but an ante out for every hand of blackjack, or every game of craps or spin of roulette wheel. And that 50-cent ante is what their profit is. And I kind of I guess interesting part of it is I say we just got to be honest with our players. You work with a ton of players through URComped, and realistically, and even Nick said it, we've got to be honest with them. They're people, and we're not trying to scam them. Just we're a business. We want to make profit, and this is how we're going to make the profit. Your $25 tables that you see out all over Las Vegas, they're doing okay, but they're doing okay because they're making the money and they can pay the $15 or whatever cost it is for their dealers. With my idea, let's go ahead and offer those lower limit games. Let's get folks that might shy away from only having 4 bets at a $25 game with a $100 buy-in, 4 or 8 with 200, whatever. Let's give them an opportunity to bet 15, 20 bets. And you've got to pay the ante, but that's how we're going to keep the games alive and the games going, and be able to have them out on the floor instead of pushing everything to the electronic table games. And my fear is it's all going to go virtual, and we'll lose the brick and mortar.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because you're saying that table mins are keep getting pushed up and up because costs are going up, and for somebody that hasn't really played table games, they may be too intimidated to sit down at a $25 or $50 game, which may be the only one available. So rather than do that, which with the cost structure the way it is, the only way for a casino to be profitable, instead say, hey, we're putting out a $5 table or a $10 table. There's going to be an ante, but as a casino, we can profitably operate that. And somebody could go sit down, they'll lose their antes, but they're only betting $5 so they could last longer.
Sure. Yeah. And they get the experience. It's one of the things that Nick talked about, and I talk about all the time, is it's the interpersonal experience that you get when you're playing at a table game versus, a slot machine. Sure, you've got your beverage servers coming by. Sure, you've got your slot attendants, and you can have great relationships with them, but it's really brief interactions. When you sit down at a table game, you're sitting down, if you're there for 30 minutes, an hour, you're having interactions for that 30 minutes in an hour with individuals. At a craps game, 3 individuals. And some of the best times that I've had in my life have been, at table games, dealing to just average folks, having great conversations and laughing and just carrying on. So I think that's an experience. It's something that, Peter Morton, the original owner of the Hard Rock, Steve Wynn, they really, really bred that into their properties. It's all about the experience. And I don't think it's a mistake that they were very successful when they were doing that. Now that we've kind of shied away from that, I think you're seeing some people that are having some troubles.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned Oklahoma, and so that we come back, because that's my only exposure to an ante on a table game. So I remember, I came from California, gambled in Nevada, and sitting down, driving up to WinStar or Choctaw, one of the two, and it took about 5 times in a row for me to finally remember to put the ante down. I'm like, what's happening? I'm like, I don't want to do the bonus bet. I'm like, no, it's an ante. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm sure they had that conversation a lot, but yeah, I mean, what do you think? So casino may hear this and say, I don't know, that's a good idea. Maybe we'll try it. Like, what do you think would be their biggest hurdles or challenges with explaining it to players?
I really do think that it's going to be that, what do you mean now I have to pay to play a hand? And realistically, I hit that when we opened up in Oklahoma. People would ask, what do you mean? I don't have to pay an ante when I play in Vegas. Well, this is how the law works here. And we don't get to share in the profits of what happens on the tables. Obviously, in most Class 3 jurisdictions, they do. But again, you're just honest with them and say, hey, we want to offer you this experience. We want to offer you the ability to do this. But I don't want to be so greedy as to say, hey, I've got to have a $50 or $100 table or a $25 table. I want you to bet what you're comfortable betting. But in order to do that, I have to get a little bit on the side just to keep the doors open and the lights lit.
Now, would putting an ante in, would that be legal? I mean, is there something in the laws, and maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't, that like, can you compel players to to pay an ante, or if the casino owns the tables, they can do whatever they want?
Yeah, I think, there's certainly going to be some jurisdictions that there's going to be some challenges to that, for sure. I think it's a national problem, so it's more than just Vegas. But, again, I think it's something that's got to come from a grassroots, which is one of the reasons why, I reached out to you. The people have to say, hey, I want to be able to play a $5 game. I want to be able to play a $10 game. And that would, I think, facilitate any changes that need be made. Many times there's not a restriction that would limit it, but I'm sure, I haven't done the research on every jurisdiction. I'm sure there are some that would say, what are you doing? You can't do that.
Yeah, just curious, but because I think if there's not any limits legally, then yeah, why wouldn't the casino try it out? One thing that, just speaking off the cuff, that I feel like would make it a lot more palatable to players is if it wasn't an ante. It's almost like a mandatory bonus bet where yeah, you're not going to win very much, but there's a 1,000,000 to 1 shot if XYZ happens, something like that, where it's like, hey, sorry, this is a mandatory bet. You got to pay $5. So in essence, it's a nanny, but there's some little morsel of value that they feel like they could hit on.
Absolutely, absolutely. You could make it. You could make it a long-term side bet like that, or side bet type like that. Certainly, with certain regulations, you may have to in certain jurisdictions, and have it be a jackpot, similar to, like, again, poker bad beat jackpots. They do a rake on poker games for the bad beats, and people, when it started, it was not necessarily the most welcome thing, because people are looking at it and going, hey, there's a percentage of the pot that I'm not getting, that I want to get. But then they started realizing, well, we've got the bad beats and we've got some other promotions that poker rooms are offering. And that turned out to be one of the most successful marketing styles for poker rooms.
Now, you mentioned, or we talked about before the interview a little bit, that one way casinos try to make their tables more profitable is, well, one is increasing the minimums, but two is screwing with the odds, where everybody used to play 3-2 blackjack, now it's 6-5. So in your opinion, do you think players would be willing to pay an ante in exchange for the 3-2 odds? Or, I mean, how do you feel about that trade-off right there?
I've never been a big fan of the 6-5 blackjack. I mean, do I understand why they do it? Yes. It was a method to keep profitability, to keep games on the floor. But I'm not a big fan of it. I'm a purist. I like the games in their purest form. And, 3-2 blackjack, it's what it is. It's what it should be, in my opinion. Okay, years and years and years ago, if you got the ace and king of, or ace and queen of spades, you got 8-1, I think it was. But 3-2 is what it's been for memorable history, and I think it's the right thing to do. You start going to 6-5, you're reducing the players' odds on the game. Realistically, table games is not a game where, and I use the analogy, we don't want people coming in feeling like they got clubbed over the head, right, and their wallet stolen. I want people to come in and feel like they've gotten some value, and they've gotten some time on device, sit down at the game, play, gotten that experience, because that's going to get them back. I mean, realistically, people win, people lose, and most gamblers understand that if I go in with $1,000, I'm likely to not come out with that $1,000. Hopefully, I'll come out with $2,000, but I'm not likely to come out with that $1,000. So they understand that it's an entertainment expense. And, I really think that you need to give people the value for their entertainment dollar. So certainly, I think from a 6-5, looking at it from a 6-5 to a 3-2, I'm playing the purest form of the game. I'm playing what I'm used to, what my father and their fathers grew up with. And if I've got to pay a little bit for it, just because the cost of everything's going up today, we all know that anytime you stop at the gas station or the grocery store. So I think it would be something that would be accepted.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense, and I could see that as well, because so if you got now you did the math, right? So yeah, maybe you could explain the numbers really quick, and on how the profitability doesn't really change for a casino between a $5 game and a $5 game with an ante and a $25 game, but it gives more time on table for the players. Maybe you could walk through it real brief.
Sure. So from a casino perspective, we're looking at the amount of money that's played on the table, the handle, and we're taking a small percentage of that. In blackjack, you're going to take roughly 0.5% to 1% of what's played on the table. So we're looking at what we call churn, a lot of money turning over on that table. And in that case, we'll make our money based on that. At a $25 game, you can pay your average supervisor looking at around $30, an average dealer looking at around $15. You can pay your staff and still make a few bucks off that game. Unfortunately, at a $5 game, you're looking in the red. there's just no way around it. It's going to cost you, quite a bit actually to run a $5 game with today's labor market. Now you put that 50-cent ante in, and it's a guaranteed take for the house, right? There's no wiggle room on that. I'm going to get that 50 cents, and that's really what's paying my staff. The $5, the win loss the casino is going to see on the $5 is negligible overall. On an individual basis, certainly. I've walked into places and lost a few $100s at a $5 game in a short period of time. So everybody that's like, every time I walk up, I lose my money right away. I get that 100% from personal experience. But, what we're looking for is instead of taking, like I said, $100 or a $200 buy-in at a $25 game, that's 4 or 8 bets. And realistically, 4 or 8 bets are going to be done in about 5 or 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you have, $100 or $200 at a $5 game, even taking out that 50-cent ante, you're looking at about, in a $100 game or a $100 buy-in, you're looking at about 18 bets. Mm-hmm. So it's a significant difference. And of course, like I said, the game is a very, very close to a 50-50 game. You're looking at 0.5% to 1% difference. And with that, you'll be able to play for quite a while versus that $25 game that, it's almost like you're putting your whole bankroll out there each time. So,
yeah. Well, if anybody has any doubts about whether it could work or not, just go up to Oklahoma and you'll see a bunch of filled up table games with people paying an ante every time.
Absolutely. Some people don't know about Oklahoma. It's the second most casinos in the country behind Nevada.
Well, and the ones, I know they got several ones around the state, but the ones, I'm in Dallas, the ones right north of the border at Windstar and Choctaw are massive.
Two of the biggest.
Yeah, they're doing big money.
Yep. So absolutely, it's a good time. I think it's something that, from a player standpoint, we can get some enjoyment back into the game and get more people onto the property. It's just maybe I'm just a little older than in my head than I think I am. But I'll tell you, if I walk in and somebody goes, go play those electronic games over there, my first thought is, why did I come in here? I can sit at home and play the electronic game if I want to. So, we really need to get that interaction and that experience back.
I love it. Well, I know there's going to be people that are going to have hot takes on bringing antes to table games. So what's the best way people can get a hold of you? What's your coordinates? So
I'm up in New York. You can reach me at my email address. I'm at Mike A. Chapman, Chapman, at gmail.com. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I'm always open to criticism, constructive or not, because, you never know who's going to come up with the next greatest idea.
And you've got a lot of great insights on LinkedIn as well. So I highly encourage everybody to follow Michael. I think it's under Michael Chapman on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Follow, connect with Mike as well. And Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.